Welcome back to another episode of the Hardcore Casual with your boy, Base the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's appreciated. Now, there's been a few fairly interesting things that have taken place over the last couple of days, so it's only right we address it. So with that being said, and with no further ado, let's get into it. So I guess probably the most breaking news, I suppose we'll say, is something that occurred yesterday, where it was now been stated that Shakur Stevenson is no longer in his fight with Cordina, which was supposed to be on the undercard of Bivol versus Better Beef. And this is purely because he had some kind of hand injury, which has required him to get immediate surgery. He's been taken out, so he says that he's going to be coming back in 2025, going to be coming back bigger and better. Now, in this particular scenario, I guess one of the main questions would be, what kind of injury was it? Because he has complained of hand injuries for a little while, especially between the Edwin De Los Santos fight. Apparently, I think somewhere in the Haratunian fight, there was supposed to be some kind of issue as well. Clearly, it's been something he hasn't been able to just overcome and deal with and manage with maybe painkillers or injections or physiotherapy, and it's required surgery, which is a bit of a shame. But I'm sure that when he comes back, after the healing process, he'll be able to come back bigger and better. How does this affect the matchroom deal, the 2-fight deal that he had? Is it just going to be extended? Is this now going to count as one against? Is the relationship going to be over? There's all kinds of things to sort of think about in that space. But what is now more important and what is a bit more interesting is the situation regarding that card being pay-per-view in the States. Because prior, that was the main event for the pay-per-view portion that was going to be taking place on DAZN before you got the Bivol and Better Beef fight going for free on ESPN Plus. What's going to happen? Is the card still going to be given as a pay-per-view card for the American market, or are they going to put that down to the regular subscription now that there's absolutely no Americans on the card and no reason for the American market to really want to purchase the event? That to me is probably one of the more interesting things about that card than anything else. But yeah, look, it's unfortunate for Shakur. I didn't particularly like the Cordina fight, and not because I don't think Cordina's a good fighter, purely because to me you don't really earn a world title fight coming off of a knockout defeat. Maybe in the heavyweight division it's a bit different, especially if you've got a rematch clause, but in a scenario like this, nah. So I guess he's gonna have to figure something else out, and maybe he can stay on that card and get a different opponent and just go further down the card, or potentially you fling him onto the Latino Knights card that's going to be taking place. We'll talk about that in a moment. That might be an idea. Or you bring him back to the UK and you fight him over here in an event, because Lord knows we need a few more UK based fight cards for Matchroom right about now. And speaking of the Latino Knights card, now initially I saw the card, I knew it was coming out, and Latino Knights was taking place. I didn't actually realize the fight card was taking place in Saudi Arabia, because it was a Golden Boy Promotions partnership card with obviously Turkey Al Sheikh and Riyadh season. I thought that card was going to be taking place in the States, just under Turkey's brand and the Riyadh season brand. Only to come and find out when the card is actually announced, it's going to be taking place in Saudi Arabia. That in itself seems a bit odd, especially if they're calling it quote-unquote Latino night. Now look, for the most part, yes, you've got a Latino community all over the world. There will be people in different pockets of different countries, continents, etc., but the majority of the Latino community will be in Central and South America and the Caribbean. All of that is very much on a USA time zone. So to have some of their biggest and brightest stars, primarily Mexican, because when they're really talking Latino, they're not really talking about Cubans and Dominicans and, you know, Argentinians and such. They're talking about the Mexican demographic, and the majority of the people on there are of Mexican origin or are Mexicans. So to have that taking place on Riyadh time in what would be 1 o'clock, maybe 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock Riyadh time, which is 5 o'clock in the afternoon slash evening, 6 o'clock in the afternoon slash evening in Mexico or in the States, doesn't particularly make much sense. But it's not my money, it's not my schedule. Cool, you know. The main event of that card is Zurdo Ramirez against Chris Smith. So it looks as if they sorted out their Junior Dortico's problem. He's probably got himself a nice little pay packet at the moment, and I'm sure that will be to face the winner of the fight. Although I'm pretty sure as soon as that fight does take place, he'll probably be offered a second step aside for Chris Smith to be able to unify with someone else. Because we was talking before, look, it looks like Chris is going to be waiting for a Zurdo Ramirez fight, pretty much, you know, ducking a Jairo Pataya fight when Zurdo's not even free because he had a mandatory and purse bids were called. Well, I did say in the last video that on the 26th of August I had a look on the WBA website, and they did say that both teams had been granted a 10-day extension to reach a deal before purse bids were commencing. So clearly that's what's happened. Junior Dorticos has been offered something that he's accepted for this unification to take place, probably on the proviso that he will face the winner. Now, if I was him, I would have parlayed that into I want a warm-up or I want a keep busy fight on the undercard or something, just to stay fresh and just to sort of stay sharp, because you don't want to be waiting another 4, 5, 6 months after to get back in the ring, knowing that, you know, you've already been out of the ring for like a year and a half, 2 years as it is. But you know, that's kind of his choice, whatever. On the undercard, you got William Zepeda against Tevin Farmer. Now that's a very, very good fight, but it's not the fight that William Zepeda should have been having. He should have been taking the Shakur Stevenson fight. Although maybe now in hindsight it looks like he made the better, smarter move, because potentially he could have been off and he wouldn't have been fighting. So yeah, if Shakur, I would assume, goes straight into a Zepeda fight next year, that definitely gives Zepeda the advantage, with him obviously of being fresh, provided he beats Tevin Farmer, which he would have pretty good odds to do, although Tevin is a very, very good fighter. We saw in the Raymond Murataya fight, he pretty much gave Raymond hell for the entire 10 rounds, and I think was very hard done by on the cards, quite frankly. There were arguments, you could say, that he should have got a draw. Some people think that probably he should have been given the decision. The last round probably went against him, where he got buzzed and badly hurt sort of towards the end of it, and that may have swayed things against him. But he's a credible guy, 2-time world champion at 130 pounds, and he's definitely got something left in the tank. So maybe the Zepeda team are looking at this as adequate preparation for a Shakur Stevenson fight. So yeah, it would be interesting to see kind of what sort of takes place with that. George Kambosos is also on the undercard. I think, is George Kambosos facing Oscar Duarte? I believe he might be. Forgive me if that's actually incorrect, but I know that's also a fight that's on that card. So you know what? As a card that's just free on the DAZN subscription, the very first card in Riyadh season that we don't have to pay anything additionally for, I got no complaints. It looks like a great card, and I'll definitely, luckily I won't have to stay up too late to watch it, so probably a watch along will be had. And I guess maybe shout out to Boxer for being able to sort of get back on the money in terms of these cards. But yeah, look, overall pretty good. I've got no complaints about it. Some of the people should have been facing other people, but these are suitable replacements. So bring on Latinos Night. Although I still kind of got an issue with that name and the title when it's not based in a Latino heavy community. But that's another story. So we had the Canelo versus Berlanga press conference last night, late last night, in fact, and it was a pretty subdued affair overall. The press conference was very much reminiscent of the initial announcement press conference they had, where it seemed a little bit more professional and more respectful than especially the second one that they had. The one they had in New York, I think, was the respectable-ish type one, and then the one they had in LA was a bit more frosty. Or they could have been the other way around, I forget. But this one, obviously in Vegas, they both seemed a bit zoned out, a bit chilled. But it almost feels for this one like while Edgar's talking and he's still, exuding some kind of bravado, the bravado isn't the same as it was before. Maybe that's because the week is starting to dawn. Okay, this is my moment. This is my time to shine. Or it could be a situation that the actual pressure of the situation at this point is starting to get to him. And on the other side, Canelo, who could, maybe have had a bit of things to bite on and have some spiteful words to say, has also been very subdued. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I love boxing. I'm looking just to cement my legacy. This is nothing new to me, and I'm ready, and I'm aiming to go within inside 8 rounds, all that sort of stuff. It's always funny when you've got to hear Eddie Hearn try to go against Canelo. If you listen to what Eddie's saying in the particular press conference itself, he's very much, I would say, respectful with his words. He didn't try to trash talk Canelo. His whole thing was, look, we've got a guy here that's coming to fight. He's gonna give it a go. He's gonna, he's looking to shock the world, and he's confident, and we're confident in him. And ultimately, the best person will win this event. Where before, sometimes he might try and pick holes in his opponent and play a bit of the mental mind games in order to sort of get under their skin and get into their head. But you can tell that, number one, he clearly values his relationship with Canelo Alvarez, and he clearly is desperate to try and work with him again in some capacity in the future. Hence, he's not gonna do the usual Eddie sell for the fight. One thing that I'm surprised about, though, because Tom Brown in the press conference says, look, this is just a great event. We don't have to sell it with artists and shows and halftime shows. It's just good quality boxing. Clearly, he's taking a shot at Turkey Al Sheikh and Riyadh season with the the concerts and stuff that they do. And I'm surprised that Eddie didn't have anything to say back to that, especially considering that he is obviously one of Turkey's current business partners, and it would make sense for him to sort of defend that position, unless either he was told, look, don't ruffle feathers because we need this PBC relationship moving forward, or if maybe he secretly is believing or agreeing with maybe what Tom said. But I thought that was a very cheap jab. I was in the gym earlier when I heard it, and I found it quite funny. Started laughing. I was like, okay, I want to hear what they got to say back to this. But yeah, look, overall it was a subdued thing. Nothing particularly special to report. It doesn't particularly change my perception of what's going to happen in that fight. I'm still not paying for it. I'm still not going to buy it, no watch-alongs, anything like that. I'll watch it the day after, and we'll see kind of what happens with that. Speaking of that whole Canelo and Berlanga thing, though, Eddie Hearn and Leonard Ellerby side by side, smiling with each other. It's a far cry from the whole "I'ma smack the shit out of you" talks that we was hearing from Leonard Ellerby every time that Eddie Hearn's name was brought up in previous meetings. Now, part of that could be, you get a bit older, you as Danny Glover would say, and I'm not talking about my boy from Fight Fan TV Live, the original Danny Glover. I'm too old for this shit. Maybe that the fight and the desire to smack the fire out of Eddie Hearn is no longer there. Or maybe it's just a case of everyone seems to talk tough about Eddie Hearn when he's not around, but when he comes, it's all smiles and hugs and hey, how you doing, and all that good stuff. You know what? For as much as Eddie Hearn talks about, these guys will probably beat the crap out of me when they see me, but I'll still stand my ground. I think a lot of guys are actually secretly afraid of Eddie. Obviously, at the moment, he's getting in shape. people know that he did have that little small amateur-ish like boxing career, or the training or whatever, you know, Eddie Hills and all of that. So maybe people aren't as quick to pop off at the mouth when they see him, you know, in person. Let's not forget he's also like 6'4.5", 6'5", quite imposing. He must be clearly at least 16.5 to 17 stone man. Like you know, you don't just pick a fight with him, even if you think you are gonna, you know, out hustle him and break him down or whatever. So yeah, maybe that's just a part of it, but I just found it quite funny that, you know, Leonard was very, very accommodating with the words. And Eddie on the other side, obviously he didn't use it as any opportunity to go. I think maybe this whole thing with him and Frank Warren getting, you know, working together and everything, and Turkey Al Sheikh, maybe he's just under directives to try and to not to ruffle feathers as much as he was before, because the fights are happening and things can now take place. Whereas maybe before there was a lot more of a him versus us or him versus him kind of mentality. Who knows, that could be one of the reasons. But either way, it's good to see the people finally getting along, but it also shows who's really about what they say and who's just talking for camera's sake. I guess I'll end this video very briefly on the upcoming Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois fight taking place Wembley Arena. Obviously, we know they've got capacity for 96,000 people, taking place on the 21st of September, live on DAZN pay-per-view. I think TNT Sports box office as well. Don't know if it's on Sky Sports box office, but I'd assume it is. Now, that's obviously going to be, I think, $20, $19.99 in the US, maybe even $14.99, not quite sure which one. But all of the undercard face-off videos have come out recently. You had Joshua Buatsi versus Hutchinson. You guys know why I'm saying that first name. You had Josh Kelly and Liam Smith, Tyler Denny and Hamza Shiraz. I think there was one other one that may have come out, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe there wasn't. I know the Josh Warrington and Anthony Kakache fight was on there, maybe, but I haven't seen anything for that one yet. Look, overall, clearly the standout of these face-offs was Buatsi versus Hutchinson, purely because we know that it got physical after the altercation. You know, Hutchinson is very good at seeming to get into people's heads and wind them up. Buatsi, as we know, is pretty much a very respectful kind of guy, very mellow, doesn't really say much, not necessarily that charismatic, but very professional and very polite and everything, until you kind of get under his skin. And but it's funny because you saw the whole thing, you saw him like smiling and everything, and just like, oh, you're a funny guy, or yeah, like you know, sometimes I think he's funny, sometimes he just winds me up, but it's almost like he wants to, there's some Ghanaian words he wants to say. He wants to go back to Ghana in his mentality, in when he was just there fighting on the roads, like when he was a youngster before he came to the UK. You can tell certain times, whereas like you learn a language and you've even got your accent, everything is there, but there's just times where you almost want to just slip back into that mother tongue. You have to try and think to process certain things. So it's like you can tell that he's not one of those guys that's proper quick-witted with the humor, and part of that is because obviously, like, English, I don't even know technically if it was his tribe's first language, or whether he was speaking something else and learned English obviously as a side thing. But it always feels like he's thinking in Ghanaian. He's thinking, I want to tell you some badness, but I can't. Let me revert back to English. To the point where, rather than trying to just do the back and forth and throw the jabs and be quick-witted, he just goes to hands. And funny enough, when I was in school, there was quite a few different African guys from different places. Nigeria, Ghana, Congo, Sierra Leone, and some other places, Ivory Coast, and that. When it came to having to be back and forth, they got frustrated because obviously English or like the UK English wasn't their first language, so banter and things didn't come naturally to them. So the first thing they just wanted to do was just swing. They didn't have time to try and think of a clever comeback. It was just like, we're throwing hands in the playground, and that's very much what it seemed like was happening with Joshua Buatsi. But look, I'm cool with Barazzi. Obviously, you guys know what I've thought about the career and how the trajectory's done and everything. But firmly, even though I haven't given my opinion for the picks yet, that will come out next week. I am 100% behind Joshua Barazzi in this fight, and I need him to dip South London, especially. But me being behind him and me backing him to win the fight doesn't necessarily mean I'm picking him. So look out for Base's picks, the special undercard edition of that, probably dropping on Wednesday next week for full confirmation of whether or not I think he'll get the job done. That being said, the others were okay. Tyler Denny and Hamza Shiraz, very respectful. I found it quite refreshing, but you know, I think Tyler is very, very confident in this one. I think he's confident in the fact that he has no pressure on his shoulders, like nobody really thinks he's going to do anything except him and his team and I guess the rest of the black country, and he's already, like, for most people would say, overachieved in his career. So to him, he's looking at this like this is just one more time to overachieve again. But you got Hamza Shiraz, the heir apparent, and again very respectful, but you know, big things are thought of and lauded for him. So he is the global ambassador for Riyadh season. So again, the pressure's on him to actually deliver. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. European title on the line. I like him. Liam Smith and Josh Kelly. It will be an interesting fight. It's not one that I'm particularly hyped about, but again, it was another decent conversation. There only seemed to be one face-off that had any kind of needle. The others were very respectful, and you know, ultimately, you don't always have to have the trash talk and stuff to sell the pay-per-view. But I guess we all know now what we want that co-main to be. It feels like that fight has to be the co-main because it's the one with the most needle. It's the one that people are gonna want to see the most outside the rest of the card. But who knows? We'll wait and see, and we'll find out. But with that being said, I want to thank everyone for watching the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And that's the Hardcore Casual out.